Well, here we are. Here we are. It's another day. It is. It's February 17th. Welcome to the HEF podcast. HEF stands for the Home Education Foundation. That is an organization started by Brenda Dickinson. And if you don't know, Brenda Dickinson is the name of home education almost around the country, but it's definitely the homegrown name in Florida, as she's been there since the beginning, working on the very statutes that brought home education rights to parents in Florida and secured those, and then also worked to protect them throughout the years for the last 4 decades, 40 years and counting. And here we are today with Brenda and my wife, Crystal, and myself to continue the support for the community as we move forward. And that's what we do. And as we do that, we're going to say thank you to our top sponsors. We have Arete and Fisher Precious Metals on as our top sponsors. And there's more to come. But we're very, very thankful to all of these sponsors. The work that we do, it's a lot. I get to see behind the scenes what Brenda does and has been doing for the last 40 years, and it's a lot of work to also have another full-time job on top of that. It's something that we're hopeful we can start to move into full-time and eliminate some of those other distractions, but nonetheless, we thank our sponsors, and we'll move right into today. So, hello, Brenda.
Hello. We've been up and at 'em this morning at the Capitol on President's Day.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
How was your morning in the Capitol?
It's sort of what we expected, but we were very thankful for about 45-minute meeting with the chair of the Education Committee. And to our great surprise, it turned out that she had homeschooled one of her children. She also taught in public school and private school, and she has a master's degree in special ed. So we were very happy to have somebody that basically understands the laws, maybe not all of our issues, but she's a good person to have in that role, because when things come up, she can help us with finding places for our language to go and understand why. It's been really tough this year.
I was going to say, yeah, the whole atmosphere in the Capitol has been an interesting one to navigate, with all the special sessions and, of course, the winter weather that kind of slowed things down. It's been
shut it down
crazy
for a week.
Yeah, and everyone's scrambling to try to find, what the leadership's initiatives are, and who's going to carry what bills, and how those are going to fit. And someone had these, but then they're being told to shift those over there, and it's a challenge.
Well, and at this point in time, they had no committee meetings before Christmas, so then they shoved them all to January, February, which I can understand why. Normally that would have been okay, but they've had work groups appointed, which are meeting today to look into why the governor vetoed certain bills from last session and see how they can fix those. Then they had the governor's special session, then another special session, and a snow week, so they weren't there. And there was a deadline near the end of January to get the bill language into drafting. So we managed to get our bill language into drafting.
Yes.
And then we started looking for sponsors for the language. We've had
a while
really
back.
we have some really good senators, and they're not limited on how many bills that they promote or file, but the House has a limit. Every member has just 7. So the new ones generally are the ones that you can find a bill slot open to support your bill. And by the time we email them, finally get an appointment with them, and then go sit down with them. And sometimes Jason and I are just walking the halls to see if anybody's sitting in their office not having any
Time to
meetings.
spare
Yeah.
that we can grab up.
Could we slip in? And we've been fortunate on a couple of them, but a lot of times they say, well, you have to email us and ask for an appointment. So then that takes another week, and you can just see that the time has been really cut short for lobbyists. And I mean, we're not the only organization that's having trouble finding bill slots. And then a lot of the new members are being given bills from leadership. So those bill slots are taken up, and then generally their constituent bills get next priority. And then if there's anything left on 7 slots, they'll consider it if it's an important issue to them. So a lot of them come to the Capitol wanting to fix issues that they've had personally or in their district. So it's been really tough to find bill sponsors this year. So they don't even have very many bills filed yet. And that's unusual.
Yeah, all the slots are full, but very few bills are actually in. And that special session is just kind of throwing everything off.
And the deadline for filing bills is the end of this month. So the other strategy we would have would be to find other people's bills that we can get some language put in to resolve some of the issues that we're working on. But we don't know who's filing what bills because there's too few filed yet. They've only heard one bill in education.
In education. Well, there's another one, I think, that it deals with bright futures. And there's one for higher education, so HB 631. It's aimed at guaranteeing fee waivers for graduate students. So they're not exactly the education we're looking at.
Yeah, they wouldn't be germane to our issues that we're trying to get fixed. So
that's a good thing to talk about. When you say germane, for some of those who might have kids watching, or someone who might be a young person who's interested. Hey, we did get interest in. I don't know if I told you this. We did get someone who was interested in interning, and they sent in a resume.
I saw that.
Yeah, I was excited. But for some of those who are listening who might not understand, what is it that makes I'll just say, I think what makes Florida's process unique, especially compared to what we deal with on a national level, is they have many subject bills and we have single subject bills. And so then if an issue isn't, maybe it's related to education, but it isn't specifically addressed here, it's not like you can just cram your amendments into it. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, back in about 1996, to the best of my memory, the legislature adopted a policy that the bills that are filed can only have one subject, as you said. Typically, it's the subject area. So one of ours, I don't have it handy, but one of our draft bills says educational choice. That would be the bill's subject. And then there are other sections referenced in there, so that refers to a statute number. So if our issue or anybody else's issue falls into that category, then they could ask us or ask the sponsor if it would be okay to add an amendment to that bill, but it has to either be educational choice, as is the subject, or it has to relate to one of the statute numbers that is spelled out in the bill. So that's what germane means. Now, in Washington, they have no rule like that, so they can put environmental issues in with education.
480-page bills.
Yeah, it's awful. It's a mess. And the people that end up having to vote on those nobody's happy with their vote because they may have voted for an educational issue, but the environmental people are unhappy and then they tag them for it. So I just think what we've done in Florida is so good for being able to talk about a single subject in a bill and not have all these other random things in that bill.
Yeah.
It seems like that would make it easier for the representatives as well, because they have to read all these bills and understand what they're voting on. So if you've got a bill that's just a mess of a bunch of different subjects, I imagine that's very difficult to keep track of and really be knowledgeable about every issue on the bill.
I think it is, and I think, not to press any opinion here, but I think that this is one of the challenges as an observation. This is one of the challenges brought on by term limits, is the turnover that it creates and the history that's kind of needed to get up to speed and running and to really understand. I do think it's helpful in that environment to be able to have single subject bills, because then it keeps your bill from having to be like a deer in headlights with all kinds of issues in it, with the same issues with term limits. But man, it's definitely, there's many factors always kind of at play when we're trying to make an impact. It's interesting too, because there are so many people who representatives and senators who we meet with, and they listen to what we have to say, and you can tell they care. There's a moment where they're listening, and you can see it in their eyes, like something kind of clicks, and you can tell that it's important to them, but it's not the only thing happening, right? And so it's kind of not just a matter of getting them to see that whether you think you're right or wrong on a certain topic, it's getting them to care. And in a world where we deal with finite spaces, if something comes in, something else has to go out. We had a very real benefit of having the Senate sponsor who was so excited to deal with the issues that we had brought to him, that his aide said, well, our docket is full though. What about this and this? And he goes, oh, push those off. This is what I want to work on. This is the kind of stuff I love to fix. And that's heartwarming. But it's also a very real reality that we're on the receiving end of that with other.
We could have been those that he pushed off.
You're right. That's what I mean. We're the ones sometimes where they're like, this isn't my thing. I wanted business law issues, or we and even in education, there's different sections, different phases of education, from the early to the transitioning into the workforce parts, and those aren't the same subject matter, even though they're in education. And so you get someone who's in education, but then their real focus is those early childhood or that transition to workforce, and that's not what we do have transition to workforce goals as a part of our nonprofit HEF Connect, but that's not these issues that we're working on now. So it's always interesting building the relationships and getting to see people face to face and seeing how things are supposed to work on paper and how they do work, and then knowing that you're kind of somewhere in the mix, just kind of tossed around and passed over. And it's why it's so important for parents in your own districts to get involved in the campaigns and get involved with them on that local level, because it's one of those things where yes, we lobby, and yes, we walk and build those relationships, but when you are the person they're representing and you have that issue and it's very important to you, it matters a lot. There's a particular parent right now who is dealing with the sports issue that we've been working on. That's been one of the most difficult the battles we've been fighting lately. And wouldn't you know, it's not germane to the other issue, so they get treated separately, and we have to tug of war even with ourselves as to which one we lead with, because we think we might actually be able to lock it in and make some headway with it. But we do have a parent who's been very instrumental in his district, making those connections. He has very good relationships with the representatives and the senators in his district, and so it's made a huge difference getting the attention to the right language in the bill, and making sure that as something is happening, there is a bill for extracurriculars, but it doesn't actually deal with everything that we need it to. Right now, it is the bill that deals with extracurricular activities. It's HB 151, and it's one of the only bills so far that's been heard. But it doesn't fully address all of the problems that the state is dealing with in extracurriculars, and it definitely doesn't address the home education or PEP problems that we're having. And so trying to figure out who to work with and how, and these relationships are key, and they become really important, especially if you're from their district and they start to work with that other person and championing you, the person that they're representing, and that issue is core. We come alongside them and give them the details and all the research that we've done, and all of the language readouts and ideas and concepts and stuff to kind of supplement and work with. But you provide that heart and soul for them. You help them carry that torch and argue behind the scenes for you, because they represent you. So that it's a big, it goes hand in hand, but it's a big part of it. So I feel like I went off somewhere. You bring me back, Brenda.
I think when it's a constituent asking for corrections or changes to the law, as I said, there's kind of a priority of how they choose which bills they're going to take on. And if it's you know them, and it's important to you, then it becomes more important to them than for a lobbyist to walk in. And the other thing is, Jason and I have been digging around trying to find background information on these legislators so that we can figure out who homeschooled, who has a sister or brother that homeschools his kids, so they kind of have a general idea. And we met a very friendly guy in the elevator the first week we were up there. You know, we'd love for him to have sponsored our bills. He's outgoing. He's very enthusiastic about being in the Capitol. He didn't know a thing about homeschooling. So
no. He had that Mr. Smith Goes to Washington vibe, though. He really did.
It's hard to bring people up to speed.
Yes.
Without some education. That's why the share your story is an important thing for us. We can find out where you're from, and maybe you can connect with them. It's great if you worked in their campaign and you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, Representative so-and-so or Senator so-and-so understands homeschooling. He's a big proponent because we worked in his campaign. Then they kind of owe you, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned the Tell Your Story project, and we've been talking about the Tell Your Story project for months now, going on 8 or 9 months, I believe. It's been almost around April of last year when we launched it, I believe. So we've been kind of putting it out there and trying to get attention to it. And I think that a lot of parents have kind of thought, I'll do that. And then life comes back in, and, you know, maybe they're not as comfortable in front of a camera and different things like that. And what's really interesting is, I don't know if you saw it, Brenda, but I posted something on Facebook the other day, because I just had this thought. I go looking for things to make marketing materials for, you know, I do marketing on the side. That's my other day job. And I'm constantly looking for good photos or stock photos of different things. And then especially when I'm designing stuff for our website or our materials, I need those. And it's really hard to type in homeschool and find anything that's authentically homeschooling. And I don't know, I got a little irritated. And I was like, doggone it. I was like, post of what you think homeschooling is. Like, give me a picture of what you think homeschooling is, you know, and it just posted. I just wanted to see what was out there because I know it is. And the post it blew up, and it turned into. I'll show you the post. So it's over here on our Facebook page, and whoop, didn't mean to. Yeah, and then people were like, "Oh, we can't post any pictures," and I didn't realize that Facebook had turned that off. So that's awesome. But I did put a link over to our forum post, which looks like this. So if you see it, great. But then we just started to get all kinds of posts. Everything that I was getting when I would look up homeschooling was parents at a dinner table at home with a computer, or kids sitting at a desk at home with a worksheet or something to that effect. And that's part of it. Don't get me wrong. But when I started seeing all of these pictures of the kids outside, interacting with old school weaponry and learning how to, this one parent here said he came home and his kids were all in the middle of all being nurses in an ER, and they're triaging little patients and sewing up, suturing their dolls.
They even had the chart on the wall, like when you walk into a hospital,
Yes.
they've got the chart with all the who's in what
Yes.
room and all of that. They had made
And
a chart.
this one's got the oxygen mask on it. And they're looking at X-rays, and this is homeschooling. This is what a lot of people don't. I say people. A lot of our leadership doesn't fully understand that it's not public school at home. I even hesitate to use the term homeschooling. I know it's so popular, but one of the reasons I think, Brenda, why you separated it out as home education is that education and school are different. They're different things, and it isn't home. It isn't school at home. It's education and learning, and it's everywhere. It's literally, absolutely everywhere. They're surfing and learning. This one's driving a boat. They're snorkeling, catching lobsters. So a lot of people travel, fishing, conventions, conferences. This one's working inside of a truck. Taking this one, I think, is taking a computer apart or putting something into the computer. A little. We need to get a Dunkin' Donuts sponsorship. Somebody contact them and let them know, since that's in the picture there. And then volcanoes. They're doing volcanoes, and it's just so much. This one's great. He's working on a circuit board, soldering on a circuit board. That's a fantastic picture. I'm probably gonna steal that one and use it somewhere. So, anyway. These are fantastic, and I'm thankful for all the parents who did this. We have been trying for months to get the videos, and it's blown my mind that one little post, while I was irritated at not being able to find good stock photos, turned up all of this rich, it's like looking through someone's window or keyhole and seeing into what they do. And this is a beautiful representation. Look at these wonderful faces. Look at these bugs, a wall of bugs. They get to go. It's just so much. There's so much. And it's not in the four walls of a classroom in a public school, and it doesn't need to be. And there's not only one way to look at education. But that's the beauty of it. Even the representative that we were talking to today, we all, I think, have the same heart of protecting children and providing them with quality education, but we sometimes have different ideas about what that is and what that means. And very much so, almost by default, the idea is, a proper education is in a school system or has a systematic approach or looks this way. And as every parent who truly home educates knows, every one of your children has a different way of learning. Like, every one of your own children are so unique and different, and cracking that code for them, it's not something you can just sit them all down and, like robots, put together a process and they all come through with the exact same amount of learning and knowledge. I had an amazing conversation with my 5-year-old last night. The family was watching TV, and I just sat out by the fire pit because it's cool up here, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. So I'm sitting out there just kind of having some peace and quiet, and the door behind me, opens and shuts. and hear his little feet walk up, and he just starts chatting away. And we're talking about life and the things that I thought he's not paying attention to, when I'm talking to him, and he just starts spitting out all of this wisdom. And I'm scratching my head, and I'm like, "You're 5 years old. Like, you're not wrong." He's like, "But Dad, I wanna grow up so I can do this, this, and this." And I'm like, "Slow down. Young people can be smart too. Like, there is no need to get old to be smart." And he was like, "You're right." And just like watching his mind and all the little synapses fire, and just having that was education. That's, character and insight and critical thinking. And it doesn't always come from a book, and it doesn't always happen within four walls. And you know best those moments because you've captured them with cameras. Put a couple of them together and speak from the heart. And if you're, some of the parents were like, I would put together an article, and I would be willing to do this and willing to do that. It's a wonderful thing what God does. My wife is an editor. She's an author and she's an editor. So if you can get it 80% of the way there, we can edit it and give it back to you for final proof. And then we could post it as an article on our blog to make it permanent, and put it together in a reservoir of content that can be referenced to really show what home education looks like, and what those freedoms and choices. Everybody's talking about school choice and expansion of school choice, and it's really not about school choice. It's about educational freedoms, choices, and that conversation needs to shift. But I don't think it's going to happen because we slap somebody on the wrist and tell them they're using the wrong words. I think they need to see it. I think they need to see it happen beyond those walls, and it happen in different environments. And if we can put a collection of stories together, from all over Florida, so that our legislators and leadership can really, really tap in and see it for themselves, see the faces and hear the stories. I know that we had the issue last week where we had the subcommittee meeting on student academic success was canceled and pushed forward. And it was disappointing, but we were able to get several of the testimonies that parents had put together pulled into a document and sent over to them. And one of them just broke my heart. The parent was told that their son would never speak well, read, or hold a job. And the child is doing all of those things. And it's fantastic to watch the children who don't fit a mold or fit into a box or do it a specific kind of way to still find their success, and what that means for them, and become functional and thrive in those unique environments. And I'm glad we were able to put that into the hands of the chair of that committee and let her see that as well. But more so, I would love for this to be, like I said earlier, there's term limits. And I would like for some of this impact to be able to be seen and experienced beyond the turnover of terms, when senators and legislators come and go. So having this online reservoir of authentic stories, any of the parents that you could share this with to get them involved, if they feel like they're not perfect at writing, that's okay. I can't take pictures of everybody's kids, but you could do that part and send us your favorite ones, and put your article together, and we'll commit to editing it for you and giving it back to you so that you can approve the final version, and then we'll post it on our blog as an article with you as a guest author. And that, I think, putting those together in a reservoir would be awesome. And we could, if there are any parents who do want to do video is amazing. It's so powerful, and it's shareable so fast and so easy. And, I'm not a great reader, so I avoid anything where I really have to read unless it's like work related, because then I know I have to. But so I'm more of a video person than a reading person. But I think it would be good for us to have content for both. And if you could help us, it's definitely going to give me a lot of things I can put into the hands of our intern. to help us out with.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, I know I've heard Brenda say before that in the early days of the statutes for home education in Florida, one of the reasons that they did not make our state require attendance and days for home education is because of Brenda's arguments to them that, education happens around the clock when you're home educating. Last night, just a few minutes before Jason was out there having that conversation with our 5-year-old, my 11-year-old came and got me because she was like, Mom, the sky is clear tonight because it's been cloudy a lot. But last night it wasn't. And so she grabbed our little book of constellations and she was standing out on the back deck staring up at the sky. And I have this little, it's like a little dial. It's paper, but you can turn it to your latitude and the date. And it shows you like what constellations are viewable from your position. So I gave that to her and the kids ran outside and they were on the deck looking up and finding the constellations. That happened at like 10 o'clock at night. So tracking the days and the hours with home education, that's the reason that it didn't make sense to do it that way, because it's just finding those moments like all day long, even into the night. There are moments that education is happening and the kids are learning and growing and their minds are expanding all the time. So if you can grab pictures of those moments, just write little snippets about those moments, even just little short moments like that you can send to us are great additions to, having a repertoire of things that we can show legislators. Like Jason said, not just this session, but to have a collection of those that we can continue to use and share in the future. So.
Yeah. Brenda, you looked like you were going to go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a teachable moment. When they're interested, they've initiated the questions, and we have the opportunity to respond to those things. And those things happen because they're with you, because those moments come along. And if they had been in school, they would have had to be in bed by 8 or 9 o'clock because they have to get up in the morning. And so the school dictates the schedule for the family, whereas, learning takes place all day long. And the thing that I keep thinking about is how some kids go to school every day and they fall through the cracks because it's not their style of learning, or they didn't have a good foundation and understand it, but they keep moving them through the system. And yet our kids have the opportunity to learn at their own pace. They can follow what they're interested in, even if they're 4 in a household. Each one is pursuing something different. And if you don't squelch their curiosity, which I think often schools do, because they have a set curriculum, but that child that's over there thinking about, something he's going to invent when he gets home, he never heard what the teacher was lecturing about. Is that true, Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
So
yes, it's so true.
If you've stuck them in a place where their curiosity is squelched and they can't pursue what they're really interested in, they didn't learn anything at school that day. It was a wasted day. But let them go out in the garage and build stuff. They have to figure out math. They have to figure out all these things by doing. And I think that's really important in the education, not in school, but in education.
Absolutely. And I think, not to just harp on it too much, but it's one of those things where, home education's not a process. It's not a system. It's not a program. It's more of a lifestyle, a life culture, maybe is a better word for it. You're building a learning environment and a thirst for knowledge and wisdom, and cultivating that and keeping it alive with curiosity at every turn. And it's fun to watch the kids realize that anything can be turned into something to dive deeper into. We were reading a sentence from the Proverbs yesterday, and I was like, kids, read it, and every time you read it, put the emphasis on a different word in the sentence, and it literally read 9 different ways. And it was like, and each way was a way to kind of have a discussion about what does it mean then if you read it with the emphasis on that word or this word. And like, you can do that with anything in life, and just becoming aware that there's a value to that kind of critical thinking and that kind of openness. That in and of itself is wonderful. That is home education as well. Anyway, I don't want to get too philosophical, but or in the weeds. The Tell Your Story project is very important to us. It's core to some of the initiatives and the things that we're trying to do, and it would be a massive boon for us to be able to reference these stories, testimonies, authentic moments that you can snapshot for us, and anyone who's willing to write up what homeschooling means to them, send that in to us. What does it look like for you? What does it mean to you? Send that in to us. We'll appreciate that very much. We do have other projects, and I want to talk about our possible intern. It was so refreshing to get a resume from someone with no experience, and that sounds weird, but I've come from this serious world where I need people to have a multiplicity of skills and prove their worth and be able to make a bet on who's going to be a good employee or not. And it was refreshing to see someone with no experience in their belt fill in a resume. And I was particularly pleased to see that this person had put that they're food motivated as one of their parts of their resume. It just tickled me to death because I thought, wow, that's great. Don't lose that part of your resume.
For food?
Yeah, don't
work for food?
yes. Don't ever take that off your resume. Just leave it there. That's such a breath of fresh air to see little things like that and realize that it's not written by AI, that they're humans on the other end of this, and it's great. It's just wonderful. That the lack of experience is almost refreshing, to see that young mind kind of coming in and trying to make room in the world. It's cool. It's cool. There's another project that we're working on that I haven't spoken about yet at all. So this will be the first time I've said anything about it. But we are building an app, a Discord server, to kind of help with communication. And so far, we've gotten a different server room inside our server for every district to try to help communicate effectively. If people want to get groups together, there's an embedded calendar. There's all kinds of really neat functions. There are voice rooms that you can actually go into, and when you step into the voice room, you have access to it, and you can chat with people, and just hop into a room and have conversations and work on projects together. You can do live streams and share back and forth within this app. It may be one of the ways at which we use moving forward to do some of our town halls. So if there's somebody who needs a virtual workshop or something like a Q&A session done like that, I can literally pile a couple hundred people in there and navigate communicating and screen sharing and putting up presentations. And it's a fantastic tool. It's very robust. And I think it's going to help us. We've been aiming at trying to have ambassadors in different districts who, whenever we need a word to be gotten out or things that are important, to be able to help us. And it's been difficult to try to organize the chaos. And I think this tool is going to be very, very useful in that way because it's going to give us a single place. We have control over the channels so they can be private. Some can be private. In fact, the ones that are private, depending on how you log in, you may never see them. They're there, but you may never see them because it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of functions in there. And so to try to keep it from being overwhelming to everyone, some people only need access to certain things. And so we don't, it's there, but it might be invisible to you because you don't have access to it. And so That's
And
a nice way of.
Go ahead.
I was going to say
gonna
there's. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Wouldn't it be cool to have that for each district in Florida if they contact their legislator, and then the legislator hears from the homeschoolers in their own district.
Mm-hmm.
It's a live tell your story.
That's possible, actually. We could give them a login where they could come and participate in a something just for their district. That's totally doable within that platform. So the brainstorming is almost limitless. So it can be there's so many options it can be difficult to choose. So your brain can get into that like stimulus overload. There's so many options. To try to keep it simple for parents, we're going to have an onboarding for people who are new, who want to get in and test it out and kind of help us find features or bugs in it. So if you're someone who is interested in that, just email us directly and let us know that you'd like to be a part of the new app. Just say new app, and we'll know what that means, and we'll get you set up with a login. It has safe spaces in there for youth. So if the students need to connect with each other on projects or have a place to go that they can be there, they can use it. It can be useful to them as well. And if any of them want a hand at using some of those tools in a way where they do their own presentations, I think that the kids are going to be far more versed in this Discord already, because it's actually a very popular tool among the young gaming community. It's one that we've kind of co-opted for our use. So I think that they'll already be very familiar with it. All right. I don't have anything else. That exhausts my topics for the day. So
does Crystal or you have any questions coming in?
I do have one. I'm not sure.
There's one in the comments.
Go ahead and read it. You can do it.
Okay, I got a letter from Step Up stating that my dual-enrolled teenager was submitted by the district as a full-time high school student. Step Up froze his scholarship, and it is now under review. So stressful. I notified the principal for home education. She said she will investigate it, as he has been homeschooled for 8 years now. Anyone else dealing with this? So my first comment would be I'm not sure what scholarship, but it seems like he probably has PEP if they froze it for him being a full-time student. But the home education principal wouldn't be the one overseeing your child's education anymore if he's enrolled as PEP. So she may hit a wall in trying to investigate that if that's the case. So if that doesn't pan out and she's not able to find out something for you, just reach back out to us, and we can see if we can kind of work on that with DOE contacts or with Step Up for you. So, did you have anything else to add?
I don't. That's pretty accurate. There's just a lot of missing pieces. And I don't know that the live stream is the place to dissect that at the moment, but if you need continued help, email us in. Because without the extra information, it's gonna be difficult for us to see.
I'll just type a comment with our email address so you have it.
Perfect.
info@flagf.org, but I'll put it here in the comment.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, for those people that may not have heard before, Jason, do you want to kind of just high overview of what we're trying to accomplish this year in the legislative session? Keep in mind, it may not work out this year, but these are the things that we're trying to accomplish.
Sure. Let me find our, here we go. One of the things that is top on our list is a definition for home education instructional programs. There is not a definition in statute, but they're listed as an approved provider in the scholarship marketplace. And so what we're really trying to do is get a definition in statute. We had a definition, and then there was some pushback on different pieces of it, and some background conversations. But because there wasn't a definition in statute, some of the pieces that were very important to us got pushed off. And And so we're really looking to protect home education instructional programs. They've been a part of the home education community for decades now. And we would hate to see any kind of bad press come and land at their feet, because there's nothing really in place to codify them and explain what they are. So then that creates kind of this shadowy, nebulous area in which a lot of things try to fit, and that kind of packing and confusion can lead to problems that we don't really want to see land on their doorstep. So that's one of the things we're working on. We're looking at IEPs. So we're looking for a solution in connection with IEPs, which would, I guess there's a number of ways to go about solving the issue. It's just a matter, and right now with everything that's going on on a national level, the goalpost seems to be ever moving in terms of this, like what's going to happen with the Department of Education, what's going to happen with this, how does that going to affect all of these things. So there's a lot of moving parts that have become chaotic, and we're not exactly sure how they're going to land. So we've got our goals and initiatives in mind, but it's one of those things where we're not necessarily hard set on a particular set of language yet, as a lot of that stuff seems to be in flux. But we're keeping an eye on that because it is one of our goals to try to make it easier for Florida families who have children with unique abilities to get their matrix level adjusted, because right now everyone basically gets kind of set up and streamlined across the middle at a 3, and for students who need extra help and care and resources, it can be extremely difficult. And so finding a way to offload that off of the districts and create pathways for making that happen, it's very important to us. It's been something Brenda's actually been working on for like 4 years now, but we hadn't seen any real movement on it until lately.
About 3 years ago, we had it resolved, and at the last minute, we had it set up for the card centers to do the evaluation. And the last week of session, we polled them, and they said, we don't want to do it. It's not part of our mission. So the money was in the budget. We had the green light to go, and they said, no, we're not going to do it. So we had to go back to the drawing board. But what you touched on, I would like to expand on.
Sure.
Some of these issues that we're working toward may get put on hold because the legislators don't know what's going to be coming down from Washington. They're a little hesitant to change Florida law until they see what's going to happen with the grants, block grants from Washington to the states. I think block granting the money to the states is a wonderful idea because it's not being micromanaged in Washington, which this issue makes it very hard for us to find a way to serve the students that are not in public school. And that's for private school students and home education students who can't get an IEP or an accurate matrix. So I'm excited that they're considering block granting, and then let Florida figure it out. But the legislators don't want to put something in law that they may have to come back and change, or we don't know how much money they're going to be getting. And so all those things make this session very uncertain.
Yes, you're right. All of that is correct. And then some on well, I can't talk. Moving down our agenda list, there are other things that are, I guess, maybe more nuances. They're going to present obstacles or difficulties, but they're not necessarily as a big problem, big a deal as some of the other things. Like there's a window of application for PEP. It doesn't match the other scholarships, and the other scholarships are open a lot longer. The PEP scholarship up until this point had been open similarly, but the language that's in the statute actually has a much harder cutoff from between February and April. And a lot of home education families, or people considering home education, considering their options, and possibly using the scholarship to kind of venture maybe out of a public or private scenario into something where they're more the parent directing the education. It's a narrow timeline, and it's pretty early on, and that's not when a lot of home educations traditionally make their plans. Plus, I'm concerned about what they're going to do. Last session, they had mentioned that the Hope Scholarship, which was used to deal with bullying in schools and creating options, was kind of vestigial because you had,
Now,
PEP.
yeah, now anyone can change at any point during the year.
Anyone can shift
Yeah.
at any point, right? And so they didn't necessarily need the Hope Scholarship, which was only for bullying. Now they could utilize any of the scholarships and be movable throughout the year. But that's just not the case with this timeline, this application window. It would close off all applications throughout the rest of the year. So we'd like to see that more in line with what they were talking about last session. The instructional materials is another one that, digital devices, there's a lot, that scares a lot of people when it comes to AI and the integration of that, virtual programs. Once you open a door to one virtual program, there's a lot that makes them uncomfortable with this. FESUA scholarship already has digital devices. It makes sense that PEP would too. There's a massive benefit to, especially when you start getting into the later ends of your education and looking to be workforce ready, a very real need to have a good command, let's just call it that, a good command over and skills with digital devices that really kind of only comes from being able to use them. And for families with, 10 kids, I know you're out there. I see you at the conventions. Or ours has 4. And just rotating the children through a single computer is a challenge. And so I think that there are some concessions we would be willing to look at in terms of like frequency of purchase and different things like that. But at least having the ability or the option. And then, of course, beyond things like computers, you've got printers or other
I was gonna make a note on that.
STEM related stuff.
Devices doesn't just mean laptops.
No.
I've had parents who, their child is really into digital art and they wanted to buy a Wacom tablet or something like that, and they're denied because they're considered digital periphery devices,
Right.
As well as printers and all kinds of other things. It's not just laptops, although laptops are the most logical thing since the scholarship allows online classes and all kinds of online things. But then if you don't have a computer to utilize them, then that's not really that helpful. Yeah. So, I think that's a broad category with a lot of really legitimate purchases inside of it. So,
let's see, there's a typo in one of them that we caught that we would like to see fixed. It's in regards to home education instructional programs, but and then there is I think the other big major issue that's on our list has to do with extracurricular activities, sports related, and that's we're seeing a lot of home education students and PEP students who are going to try to participate in extracurricular activities, particularly sports. They want to try out, and they're just across the board being denied. Even though it's spelled out in 1006.15, the Craig Dickinson Act, that they would have the opportunity to do that and the right to do it. It's just kind of, there's a reference statute to that was introduced later in 1003 that gives a maximum class size and capacity. And so what they're doing is they're treating academic capacity as a gatekeeping mechanism for whether or not you can play a sport, even though you're not sitting in a classroom. And so they just dismiss them. And that's become the default answer from many districts. Yeah, they just by default just go, nope, you can only play at your zone school. Nope, you can only play at your zone school. And that wasn't the original intent of the Craig Dickinson Act and the way that it was written. And so we're trying to get language in there that would clear up and make it clear what the original intent was, but also like, give the language a very specific lead so that the intent is clear and not
Right.
vague. Yeah, because right now it is vague, and it can be read two different ways. And it could be argued well. I think I could probably argue both sides and confuse myself if I wanted to. It's because it is vague, but it would be good to have it cleared up and restore those access to those. So that's kind of our list. That's our rundown. We have 2 minutes left. Brenda, is there anything you want to? Did I miss something?
No, if any of the listeners out there have people who they know who are representatives or senators in Florida, it would be a good time to let us know who those are and who you know.
Absolutely. And a perfect place to do that would be in the new app that we're working on. So if you are one of those technologically adventurous people in our homeschool community, and you'd like to kind of help us either find bugs in it or get around and use it and poke around, that would be wonderful. And just email us and we'll get you an onboarding link so that you can get added to that. In particular, there's a onboarding questionnaire, and as you pick certain things in the questionnaire, it gives you access to things inside the Discord and kind of gives you a path. So curates your experience, so to speak. So that's anybody who's interested in that, let me know. I don't have anything else. Brenda?
Nope.
Okay. Crystal?
No.
All right. Well, it has been it's been a great month. It's still going to be a great Monday. I know it. I can feel it. We're going to say thank you to our top sponsors. One more time, thank you to Arete and thank you to Fisher Precious Metals. If you do know anyone who is interested in supporting, and this is tax season, it's coming around, people are thinking about money. If they need a 501c3 that they would like to support that does good work, we're here. And we are looking for additional top sponsors. So if you know someone, or if you know a good CPA that does taxes for people and has, a book of recommended nonprofits that they turn to whenever they're trying to do their taxes, connect us with them as well. We're looking for it, and we appreciate all of the support from all the parents. You guys take your Monday back and enjoy making those memories.